Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we are going to be discussing and making sense of JJ Watt to the Green Bay Packers. So let's get started. Now, for those who are new to subscribing to my channel, thank you for tuning in. For those who already subscribed to my channel, thank you too as well. Be sure for the both of you to flip on and turn on the bell notifications so you get notified when I go live or when I upload content. Also, I'm noticing that 83% of you are looking at all my stuff, liking my stuff, and really watching and keeping up to date on my podcast. So do me a solid, hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen here as you stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. All right, so let's go ahead and discuss a potential move that the Green Bay Packers would make, and that player would be JJ Watt. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because if you notice the reports that were put out yesterday that he was basically taking time in what teams he wants to go to and kind of sifting through the possible landing destinations, it also comes down to money. If you watch my earlier podcast on Deshaun Watson trade rumors, you will notice that in every potential trade rumor, I included JJ Watt at the time before his release, and I strictly pointed that out because he was due $17.5 million, which would endure a 2021 cap number. However, he had zero dead money tied to that contract for that last year of his deal, or excuse me, for that 2021 year. And when you do that, it really puts the new GM Nick Caserio in a tough spot because you're trying to start fresh, and it's hard when you have an aging player like JJ Watt who really doesn't have the all-pro perennial Defensive Player of the Year stats and statistics that he normally would put up in the beginning of his career. But that's not to say that JJ Watt still can't have that same type of impact. He just wasn't getting it done in Houston because of the supporting cast around him. And he's been injured. So red flags there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about this podcast as it relates to JJ Watt. Again, I put up a second JJ Watt podcast on my 4 likely landing destinations, which included the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, among some other teams. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers were the other one. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about JJ Watt potentially moving to the Green Bay Packers. All right, well, if you look at, like I said, he's a free agent now. He's off the books with the Houston Texans. He's free to sign with any other team. He instantly becomes the top edge defender in the 2021 free agent class. Now, when you tie in earlier podcasts that I talk about in Deshaun Watson or him going or wanting to go to a Super Bowl contender, you have to take that into account. And for this reason, the Packers are a logical option. Now, the question remains, how much money do they have tied up now? Right? Because if you look at their salary cap health, they're kind of in the red right now. So where's the money going to come from? It doesn't grow on trees, right? And with the depleted salary cap dropping from 198.2 to 180 million, roughly depending on the TV ads and so forth, and the revenue that's coming in there, it's really putting the Packers in a bind here. But with that being said, let's look at it and peel back layers of the onion to really get to the core, as I always say. The Packers have a need for a 3-4 defensive end. All right, they play in a 34 base. They need a 3-4 edge rusher. And if you look at their starting edge rushers right now at 3-4 defensive end, well, none of them are really edge rushers. I mean, you look at Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster. They're just 2-gap plug-and-play players that stuff the run. I mean, when you put the numbers all together from 2021, I think they only combined for 3 sacks. And that's not enough to get it done. And a 3-4 defense, typically you have at least one edge rusher. If you're really good front seven, you'll have 2, like the Pittsburgh Steelers with Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward. And you'll really have some pieces to work with from a pass rushing standpoint. Well, the pass rush has been not strong. And when I say not strong, I mean you have the Smith brothers, right? You have Darius Smith, and then you have Preston Smith outside linebacker. But then you need more pass rushing presence down in the trenches. And with that being said, I think JJ Watt would be a perfect ideal fit for the Green Bay Packers. And let's be honest, right? Like I just pointed out, JJ Watt can get 3 sacks in his sleep. So when you put that into account, you have to take into consideration that JJ Watt could be in play. All right, but let's look at it from another standpoint, right? He's a hometown kid from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Will he take a hometown discount? 15 to 16 million is still a high price and steep price to pay, but at the end of the day, it's not 17.5 million. And While that's not a great hometown discount, it is something to think about because, again, the Green Bay Packers have a need at 3-4 defensive end that I just pointed out. And J.J. Watt wants to go to a Super Bowl contender. And with the Green Bay Packers going to 2 straight NFC Championship games, it's kind of reminiscent of the Jim Harbaugh years when he came on back in 2011, where they went to the NFC Championship game against the New York Giants. He did it with the Atlanta Falcons, and then the following year against the Seattle Seahawks. So what I'm saying is, if you're 1 or 2 pieces away, and that missing piece could be J.J. Watt, you go and make that play. You go and make that power play move. All right. Now let's go ahead and peel back another layer of the onion. All right. Hometown kid, the need is there. Super Bowl contender. Let's peel back the 4th layer of the onion to really get to the core. Cap space. It goes down to cap space, right? The Packers are currently $11.5 million in the red, as I pointed out earlier. However, isn't it funny that right after J.J. Watt was released, that news broke that left tackle David Bakhtiari would restructure his $105 million contract extension and use his $11 million roster bonus and convert that roster bonus into the form of a signing bonus spread over the life of the contract to save the team $8.3 million in cap savings? I'm just saying, that happened right after J.J. Watt was released. So you don't think GM Brian Gutekunst is thinking, hey man, like, dude, if we get J.J. Watt, he already knows the 3-4 base system. We already know what he can bring to the table. Yeah, he might not be the perennial defensive player of the year honors type of guy, but what we're getting is a veteran player who still has all pro talent and can be a double-digit sack artist if given the right opportunity. And we are probably 1 or 2 pieces away from really making a run at the Super Bowl because we are right there, man. Like, we're just right there. If you remember back in 1994 with the San Francisco 49ers, they were always losing to who? The Dallas Cowboys, right? And they were always right there. They were always right there, but they were 1 or 2 pieces away. What'd they do? They went ahead and picked up Deion Sanders. What did he end up doing? Be the NFL Defensive Player of the Year while also helping the team not only beat the Dallas Cowboys in the Super Bowl, beat the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl, but then did his dirty work against the San Diego Chargers, locking down that side of the field that he was on, and ultimately being a game of a blowout in which the San Diego Chargers got trounced by the 49ers in their quest for 5. So when you put that all together, and if you look at really what the Packers roster is trying to do in order to get over the hump, and with Aaron Rodgers being disgruntled after his post-game press conference and how that was playing out, you have to wonder. J.J. Watt could be the missing piece, right? He could be the missing piece. And then let's peel back another layer of the onion to really get to the core, right? We talked about hometown discount, going to the Super Bowl contender, and whether or not they have the cap space. So I just went ahead and tied in David Bakhtiari's contract and how that plays a role. And then how there's a need there at 3-4 defensive end, right? That's 4 layers of the onion to really get to the core. Now here's the 5th layer. Preston Smith. I just pointed him out earlier, right? Preston Smith had a hell of a year in 2019 coming from Washington. However, what we quickly realized was Rashan Gary was on the come up. And you don't draft Rashan Gary in the first round to ride the pine. He actually played really well down the stretch, and he would be a cheaper, better alternative for the Green Bay Packers moving forward, because if you wipe your hands clean of Preston Smith, who signed that big money contract, you would save the team $8 million in cap savings because he's tied half of that money in dead money with another $8 million and a $16 million cap hit. So when you put that all together, by releasing or trading Preston Smith, you're wiping your hands clean of $8 million off the books, which then you can roll over into possibly landing a guy like J.J. Watt. And then if you're wondering, like I just said, oh, well, who's going to take on his role then if Preston Smith is gone? I just said Rashan Gary. So it's win-win, right? So that's another layer of the onion to really get to the core. You see how I'm peeling back layers of the onion to get to the core of exactly why it makes sense for J.J. Watt to come to the Green Bay Packers? Now, will this happen? Who knows? I don't know. I'm not the GM. But does it make sense? Absolutely. And the reason why I'm putting out this podcast is because I firmly believe that he has them as their top one or two choices. I think it's going to come down to possibly the Green Bay Packers, Cleveland Browns, and who knows, even the Buffalo Bills. The dark horse is the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I pointed out earlier, right? In an earlier podcast, and how the three Watt brothers could be reunited in Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of destinations that he can go to, but ultimately, for me, if I'm looking at it analytically, I'm saying the Green Bay Packers make the logical choice if he really wants to win the Super Bowl, because the Pittsburgh Steelers are not a Super Bowl contending team right now. They have a gaping hole at running back. They're going to have to draft one probably at 24. That guy would be a perfect fit, would be Najee Harris. However, Mel Kiper has Landon Dickerson being mocked to number 24 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I'll get into later in a later podcast. But the offensive line is shaky. Their left tackle, Alejandro Villanueva, is a free agent. They had to move Matt Filer from right tackle to guard for the upcoming season. They did draft Kevin Dotson, who's a great find from the Raging Cajun in the draft. So you do have pieces. Obviously, you have David DeCastro, who is playing at an all-pro level, perennial all-pro, but he's been banged up over the past few years. So when you take that into account with Marquise Pouncey retiring, the offensive line has really been on shaky ground, and it's going to be a game of musical chairs there. So when you put that into consideration, and then you look on the flip side of that, and you have guys like Bud Dupree, who's an edge rusher specialist, but he was banged up. He tore his ACL, so he was out for the year. So we don't even know if he's going to return to the year because he's an unrestricted free agent. Obviously, the team had accounted for that with third-round pick Alex Highsmith, but there's a lot of moving parts in Pittsburgh. And especially in that secondary, you can get into that later. But you see how these scenarios all play a role. If you're J.J. Watt and you're J.J. Watt's agent and you're really looking for a Super Bowl contending team, Pittsburgh is not an ideal situation, especially if you're looking for a 3-4 year contract. Because by the time the Pittsburgh Steelers become relevant again, it's going to be at the end or the last year of that contract. So that's even a crapshoot. So the Green Bay Packers are right there for the picking. And that's why I think you go with J.J. Watt, because again, you can wipe your hands clean, clear cap space by removing Preston Smith from the equation, plugging in Rashan Gary. He's a smart play with little drop off in production. Again, you roll over the savings and use that to sign J.J. Watt for a contract. And then you get Aaron Rodgers on a happy note. Like, he's going to be happy. Like, he's going to be like, oh man, we got J.J. Watt. Now we're really doing, I mean, I was mad about getting Jordan Love in the first round, but we got J.J. Watt this year. So, okay, they're somewhat listening to me. Okay. They're trying to get me some supporting cast. All right. I mean, 2 straight NFC championship games, bro, in a row in Matt LaFleur's first 2 years. It's similar to Jim Harbaugh. This could be a Jim Harbaugh scenario where next year, if they don't do anything, they'll go to a 3rd straight NFC championship game without being empty-handed, without winning the Super Bowl. So you really want to end it on a strong note. And anytime you can get a guy like J.J. Watt, who are your 1 or 2 pieces away, you have to do it to get him over the hump. And it's kind of a deja vu scenario, which I like to point out. I'm a little bit older, but I remember when Reggie White came to the Green Bay Packers. I believe the contract was like $15 million or something. Wow, imagine getting Reggie White on a 5 year contract, whatever I don't know the extent of the contract, but it was like 15, 20 million, whatever that number was. It was really low compared to today's standards due to inflation. But yeah, anytime you get a minister of a defense type of mentality and a guy who can really set the bar and kind of raise that defensive mentality, mindset, and ranking, you go ahead and do it. And I believe J.J. Watt could be that missing piece and have a Reggie White type of mentality and presence in the heart of that defense. Similar to what Jamal Adams brought to the Seattle Seahawks coming over from the New York Jets. J.J. Watt is a transcendent player where he can literally transform a defense. And if the Green Bay Packers play this right and get J.J. Watt, it would be a play that would not only shake up the NFC, but strongly consider the Green Bay Packers as frontrunners for the NFC title. Now, we don't know what's going on with Aaron Jones, and we don't know what's going on with some of these other pieces. Obviously, wide receiver, yeah, we have MVS, you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you obviously have Davante Adams, who is playing at a first-team All-Pro, had a hell of a year there. and you have some other, Robert Tonyan from, the tight end and so forth. But you really need more pieces to the puzzle. And on the defensive side of the ball, especially, when you have guys like Jair Alexander, who is my top ranked cornerback in my grading system. For those who don't know, I run my own grading system, so I don't rely on PFF. I formulate my own. Jair Alexander was ranked number 1. All right. When you have guys like Jair Alexander, right, on the back end, and then you look at the front 7, because everything starts up front. You guys know that if you guys follow me. JJ Watt would make everybody exponentially better. Well, that'll be it for right now. I will be back doing another podcast and breaking down the Pittsburgh Steelers mock draft as it pertains to Mel Kiper and how he has the Steelers taking an Alabama player. Thank you for tuning in. If you liked what I had to say, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as you stay up to date on all things Beast. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back. BEASTwriter out.